think my identity as a Chicana is the one I think about the most, because I'm coming more into that recently. I think in the last year I've really developed my understanding of what it means to be a Chicana, and in this context especially, so that's my most pervasive one. That's the one I think about the most, statement. And I think just existing as a Chicana in this country is a political statement. The identity Chicana is very politically charged as compared to just saying Mexican American. So I would say, yeah, I think being here, where the only other people who look like me are the groundskeepers, and they're the only ones that I can really talk to outside, on campus. Like outside campus, it is different, but yeah. I have had my identity called into question by people like who come from similar communities of mine, and then from people who are like, what is a Chicana? Like, I actually had the question asked for me today from somebody who was Chinese, and he was like, you're so picky about Mexican food, why? And I was just like, because blah blah blah, and I like was explaining everything. He's like, okay. But for my own community, I think part of the reason why I've really like clung on to this identity is because I've always felt a rejection from like international students, or just like people who come straight from Mexico to study here in college or in high school too. I felt it, but then I also feel like a rejection from like traditional and mainstream Americans, whatever that means. Like, I don't know what that means, like, but I like, so within the brown community, some people claim Hispanic, some people claim Latino, some people claim Chicano, or some people are just say like, I'm Nicaragüense, I'm Guatemalteco. Like, they'll just say like what country they're from. But for me, like, I know I exist as I exist in like a metaphysical, mental borderlands, but also I come from the borderlands, and so that's why I claim that specific identity. And but yeah, I have had it called in question, like, why do you have to make it something different? Like, why can't you just say Latina? Like, why is it so difficult for you to say that? What are you talking about, colonized blood? Like, what does that mean? So it's as that kind of identity label is getting more attention, it's also getting more criticism, I think. But the Chicano movement's been around since like the 60s, so it's been around for a long time. But yeah, so markers. But then my junior year I studied abroad in El Salvador, and that changed everything, because I started to understand, like, my understanding of feminism changed to include brown people, because before that I thought it was only like Gloria Steinem and like Judith Butler, and which is like, you know, whatever. But so I gained a bigger understanding of the possibilities, which seems like really not ignorant to say, but like how could I have been so limited when like I had so many like resources. And so when I got back, I really sought out refuge in writings by Chicana writers. And you know, growing up, my mom always rejected the label of Chicano because she thought it's those people from LA, like, that's not us, we speak the proper Spanish, you know, we're Mexican. But she only claims the Mexican identity when it's convenient for her. So adopting the Chicana identity was really important. And then during the summer of last year, I read Borderlands by Gloria Anzaldúa, and that changed everything. And then I read Women Who Run with the Wolves by Clarissa Pinkola Estes, and those two books, they just opened my eyes to everything. And Borderlands specifically really explained the like inner turmoil I've always had about like my half and half identity, of like not being American enough for the Americans, not being Mexican enough for the Mexicans. And so it just explained all of that, and, you know, explained that there's a culture for us that are like en mitad, like in the middle. And so since then I've just been doing a lot of reading and a lot of browsing on the internet for looking for other like writers, because it's very hard to get published if you're a woman of color. And so really, like, I don't know, just, I guess, as much as I don't like labels, having a label felt good for the first time. Like, something felt like a badge of pride, like, this is who I am, and there's like a history behind it, and I'm not alone. So not feeling alone was like really what was like, yes, this is me, I can do this. I never had interest in like joining a sorority or like any student groups on campus. So immediately freshman year I started seeking off-campus work and like volunteering stuff and like community stuff. So no, I never felt the need to, but I can understand why some people do, and I've seen it happen to other people who claim the identity of Latino. If they're white passing, they're very apt to assimilate and reject any sort of politicization or activist work or anything relating to like admitting that there's oppression. I guess I like rejected SLU from the beginning because it rejected me from the beginning. It's really shitty. So part of the Chicano fight right now outside of SLU and outside of Missouri, like in Arizona, is to get Chicano studies on curriculum. And a lot of, in Texas and New Mexico too, and in Arizona they made it completely illegal. And yeah, because it's anti-American and promotes treacherous ideals or something like that. I don't remember what the quote was, but so it's been really, at the same time that it's been really enriching, it's also been really frustrating not to have my identity mentioned at all in curriculum unless we're talking about immigration.
Yeah.
And immigration's a huge part of my community, and that's part of my activism, and part of like the work that I do is making sure people know like what rights they have as immigrants, documented or undocumented, and there's a huge amount of struggle in that community, but that's not the only thing that we face. And there's a lot of internalized oppression and a lot of internalized racism, and our community is very complex, and even saying our community seems kind of like disingenuous because there's so many little parts of the community. Just because there's people from Guatemala, from Nicaragua, from Panama, like South America, everywhere. So, but yeah, like doing my own research has been good because I get to tailor it, but it's something I have to do aside from the work that I'm doing. And I'm already so busy as a student that it's like I can only read one book a month when I would rather be reading 7 or 10 books a month about my own people. And not everything that I want is accessible because our library isn't stocked with a whole lot of it. So especially around like queer theory, again, like I wish I could major in Chicano studies. Like I wish I could like speak to scholars about it. If I went to the University of Texas in Austin, I could do that.
Yeah, you could.
No, I guess just like, what was I saying? Oh, just, this is not just for SLU, but everyone else that exists outside of marginalized communities or in like dominant groups. I don't like saying dominant groups. Like,
that's what I am.
Just because, anyway, I'm not going to get into that politics, but communities of color exist outside of political debate. And we aren't as simple as people think we are. I don't know, I feel like with my community it's about immigration or about I don't even know what people like besides immigration. That's the only issue that we're talked about, like mentioned about. So I guess like we're not as simple as we look, which just seems really cheesy and like not, but I mean it really affects our existence. I feel invisible as a human being on this campus on a generally, and then in society at large I do too. But I guess like specifically for SLU as an institution, I wish there were more resources for people of color besides social student groups, or like occasional symposiums or whatever. Like I wish there was more than just the occasional like display of artwork in different places. Like I just want more representation. I think just in general, like I wish I could see more brown faces around campus. And there's so much, there's so much, like even just like, in the language arts department, I wish the Spanish that was taught didn't have to be strictly Castilian. Like I wish it could be Latin American Spanish, because when I took Spanish here, I was told my Spanish wasn't correct. Anyway, but yeah, I guess just like I wish there was more representation in general, and I wish that I didn't have to feel excluded or And that just goes for like life in general, right? We don't want to feel excluded ever, but I feel like in a space where you're supposed to be learning, and you're supposed to develop and grow, when you're so expending so much energy and time on like feeling alone, you can't really like be a fully functional student. And that's, you know, my own like mental health has tied in a lot with that, like trying to like understand myself and understand like how to manage this space in a healthy way. But yeah, I guess just like please let more brown people in, like please. Ex-student group is that it's, for one, it perpetuates a lot of the negative stereotypes that are attached to Latinos. And I'm going to use Latinos as a general term because not everyone identifies Chicana, obviously. You know, that all we do is party and all we care about is drinking, and it erases a lot of other identities because the two events are based in Mexican tradition. So Cinco de Mayo, which nobody in Mexico celebrates except people in Puebla, and Dia de los Muertos, which that's a really sacred, like a very, very sacred day for me as like me, but it has roots in like our indigenous tradition, and so for it to be appropriated and spread on a majority white campus is really, it's hurtful for me. Because people think it's just about the sugar skulls and just about eating pan dulce, and it's so much more than that, and there's so much like richness to that day, and for it to be made a mockery of is really problematic in a lot of ways. And also just the label of the group, Hispanic American, like for me, I would never claim the label Hispanic, because I don't want to give word to my, you know, whatever colonizers I have in my past, and so that label excludes a lot of people, which is why there's CALSA, because a lot of American students don't feel welcome in that group, so they created their own, which is great, like create your own space. And you know, the group in general is very apolitical, which is very problematic. Like I said before, just existing as people is a political statement, and if you think otherwise, then you've got a lot of internalized oppression going on, like, so for the groups to be so apolitical and to perpetuate these negative stereotypes, to erase all other countries besides Mexico, and I'm Mexican, and like I love my holidays, but I would really love to learn other holidays and other traditions, and learn more about, like, you know, the other indigenous tribes, like in Latin America's like traditions or whatever, but it's that group is very problematic, and that's why I've never been very involved. I think from even my freshman year, even when I didn't have like this really deep understanding of my own identity, I still felt uncomfortable. Like I didn't feel that a salsa class really properly represented me, and again, perpetuating negative stereotypes that all Latinos want to do is eat, drink, and dance, and we, again, are more complex than that, and those are the same stereotypes that we see on television. If we're not the landscapers and domestic workers, we're the, you know, sultry mistresses, and or like, I don't know, anyway, so yeah, it's, that group has been very, I don't have, with the individuals in the group, I have good relationships, but as a group in general, I don't want to like be part of it. Know that we have to come together and like talk about these things, and we have to own up to our anti-blackness in the community, because it's so real, especially on this campus. And we have to own up to the white passing privilege, and we have to own up to all these things, and just like wake up, like wake up, like and I guess because like in the greater St. Louis community, the Latinos that I connect with are so incredibly awake and aware and so driven to make a statement about their existence that like being on campus frustrates me to no end. But yeah, I don't have very good relationships with the CSOs on this campus. And like I said, the individuals in the groups they're great. They're great as individuals, but again, as a group, the group mentality is problematic for me.